You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk. And the big story from the NFL is the Jets winning yesterday and the Jaguars now having control of the first overall pick. I already talked about it on the Jets instant recap, so I'm not going to do it again. Instead, I want to talk about Chiefs Saints. By far and away the game of the week in the NFL. The Chiefs pulling out the win in a very, very close game because of course they did. They're the Kansas City Chiefs. They have Patrick Mahomes. That's what they do. I'm not going to talk too much about the Chiefs end of things. Mahomes did what Mahomes does. Clyde Edwards-Helaire did get hurt. It looks like he's going to be out for the next couple games. That's why the Chiefs went out and signed Le'Veon Bell. He looked good yesterday. Averaged over 4 yards a carry, had a touchdown. Travis Kelce did his thing. Tyreek Hill did his thing. Sammy Watkins did his thing. The Chiefs are fine. The team that isn't fine is the New Orleans Saints. I understand that this was Drew Brees' first game back from his injury. It's a fair bet to say he wasn't 100%. It's hard to go up against the Kansas City Chiefs when you're 100%, let alone whatever Brees was yesterday. Brees completed just 15 of his 34 passes. The reality is that's not the Drew Brees we've come to know and love. I don't care if you are 100% or 1%. That is an inexcusable performance by any quarterback, let alone a future Hall of Famer. The Saints started the game off dreadfully. They were behind the 8 ball immediately. Then you have a golden opportunity to tie it up just before halftime. You get Demarcus Robinson to fumble the ball, and you end up knocking it out of the back of the end zone. I don't want to say if you recover that fumble, you win that game, because Mahomes would have approached that final drive differently. But you can't leave points on the table when you're going up against the Chiefs. It is like the Patriots. You need to play a perfect game. That's how dominant the Chiefs are. Let me ask you something. Would it surprise you if at some point in time the Chiefs went 16-0? Would it surprise you if they did what the Patriots couldn't and go 19-0? That's how great the Chiefs are. But back to the Saints, it's kind of funny. A lot of people were saying that the Saints are the team to beat in the NFC. Look at what they're doing without Drew Brees. Brees comes back and completes less than 50% of his passes. I understand he threw for 234 yards and he threw 3 touchdowns. He wasn't awful yesterday, but he wasn't great. The Saints are going to need him to be great if they're going to go on a big run. I mean, there were half-serious calls yesterday for Sean Payton to bench Breeze for Taysom Hill. It doesn't get much worse than that. I understand what Hill did in Breeze's absence. He wasn't bad. He wasn't great. But he wasn't bad. It's a little disconcerting to see Breeze come back and look as bad as he did. This is not Drew Brees. He's done. This is his last year. He already signed the deal with NBC. This is the second straight year he's gotten hurt. What more does he have to accomplish? Win another Super Bowl? That's not going to happen this year. I don't even think the Saints are getting out of the NFC. Could they get to the conference title game? Yeah. But I don't think they're beating the Packers. I hate to go chalk, but I think we're looking at a Chiefs-Packers Super Bowl. The Seahawks don't scare me if I'm the Packers. Washington doesn't scare me. The Rams should scare me, but after seeing them lose to the Jets, I can't say that with 100% confidence. The Buccaneers would scare me a little bit just because they have Tom Brady. I don't think the Cardinals scare me. I do think the Packers are going to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. The reality is, this is a Saints team that's just a little overrated. Everyone was going on about how great they looked without Breeze. If this is what they can do without Breeze, what are they going to do with him? Well, they lost. I understand it's to the Chiefs. But that's really not an excuse. So let me get this straight. If it's a Chiefs-Saints Super Bowl, and the Chiefs win, are Saints fans going to say, it's okay, we lost to Patrick Mahomes? No. Also, you look at the teams that the Saints beat with Taysom Hill at quarterback. They beat the Niners, the Falcons twice, and the Broncos. Hill's last start, they lost to the Eagles. Those aren't world beaters. I understand that Breeze's second to last start, where he played a full game, you destroyed the Buccaneers on Sunday Night Football. I was watching that game. That was an impressive win. There's no question about that. But what have you done for me lately? Breeze comes back and doesn't play up to his standards. I'm not going to say he was dreadful or anything, because he wasn't. But that's not the Drew Brees that we've come to know and love. He's got to right the ship quickly against the Vikings and Panthers. If he doesn't ball out in those games, the Saints could be looking at a first-round playoff upset. As great as Alvin Kamara is, he can't do it all by himself. Some people got on Cameron Jordan as being the one who cost the Saints this game. Look, Jordan didn't help. He was an idiot. But you gotta blame Breeze more. Am I counting the Saints out? No. It's very possible that Breeze rights the ship. I'd be a fool to say definitively that this is it. The Saints aren't going to do anything. But as of right now, it's not looking very good. The Saints are in a little bit of trouble. Moving on now to the Panthers firing Marty Hurney. And this is kind of interesting. Firstly, let me say that this isn't a bad decision by the Panthers to fire Hurney. When he came back after taking over for Dave Gettleman, the Panthers went 16-30. Yeah, he had a few good draft picks. DJ Moore, Brian Burns, Jeremy Chin. But his 16-30 record doesn't lie. I saw some people say that he's the one who brought Matt Rule to the Panthers. How are you letting him go? No, he wasn't. David Tepper's the one who brought Matt Rule to the Panthers. More specifically, it was David Tepper's checkbook that brought Matt Rule to the Panthers. It was Dave Gettleman's failure to seal the deal in getting Rule to the Giants that got Rule to the Panthers. Marty Hurney had nothing to do with it. The Matt Rule point is a good one, though. How much say is the new GM gonna have? Because Rule was given a ton of power with the Panthers. He was given a massive contract. He's the guy. He's the golden boy. You're in a situation that's not so different than one the Jets were in a couple years ago. You fire Mike McCagnon, and you're saying to prospective GM candidates, you have to work with this head coach who we think the world of. Look how that worked out for the Jets. David Tepper did say that he's going to involve Rule in the hiring process. He kind of has to. But again, you're giving Rule a ton of power. You're letting him pick his own boss. I just saw that doesn't work. Adam Gase picked Joe Douglas. Joe Douglas is the architect of a team that's going to go 1-15. These forced marriages between GMs and coaches doesn't work. You need to give the GM the power to hire and fire coaches as he sees fit. The reality is there's only one way that this can work. The Panthers need to bring in Jerry Reese. Matt Rule was an assistant offensive line coach for the 2012 New York Giants. Guess who their GM was? Yeah, Jerry Reese. You need to find a GM who thinks the world of Matt Rule, who really views him as an offensive guru. I'm not trying to kill Rule. I like Rule. I think Rule will do good things with the Panthers. Teddy Bridgewater's having a good year. Robbie Anderson's having a great year. Mike Davis has come in and looked solid. I'm giving all that credit to Rule. I'm giving none of it to Joe Brady. I don't care that Brady's calling the plays. It's still Rule's system. Rule is still the head coach. I'll put the fact that the Panthers only have a top 20 offense on Joe Brady. But the good seasons that Bridgewater and Anderson have had, that's Rule. Rule brought those guys in. You've got to realize, he has so much power with the Panthers. Marty Hurney was really a figurehead. A lot of people are saying that he could go to Washington, become their GM because they don't have a GM, reunite with Ron Rivera. That would make sense. That would make perfect sense. But the reality is, you've given Matt Rule more power than he deserves. He's now picking his own GM. The only way it works is with Jerry Reese. That wouldn't be a bad move for the Panthers, but you've got to bring in someone who legitimately thinks the world of Matt Rule. You've got to bring in someone who can collaborate with him. If you really want to make this a collaborative effort, if you're David Tepper, in running the Panthers, it's got to be a guy who legitimately thinks the world of Matt Rule. There is a real chance that this can blow up. They need to get this hire right. I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't having New York Jets flashbacks. Alright, now I'll give you some college football Valk talk. And I'll start with Oklahoma beating ISU. This game wasn't as close as the score would indicate. Oklahoma thoroughly outplayed ISU. Brock Purdy did not look good. He threw 3 interceptions. Breece Hall averaged under 3.5 yards per carry. Oklahoma did a fantastic job of confusing Purdy, Hall, and Matt Campbell. Give Alex Grinch, the Sooners defensive coordinator, a ton of credit. But you also have to give Lincoln Riley a ton of credit. Spencer Rattler looked really good, completed 22 of his 34 passes for 272 yards. He was responsible for 2 touchdowns. Ramondre Stevenson had a big game, nearly rushed for 100 yards. Marvin Mims. What did I tell you about Marvin Mims? Keep an eye out for him. He had 7 catches for 101 yards and a touchdown. If the Jets don't get Trevor Lawrence, they really have no shot at him. He's gonna be a Jaguar. That's lock, stock, and barrel. Lincoln Riley is my second choice for next Jets head coach. Eric Bieniemy is still number 1. Dabo Swinney would be number 3. I was really impressed with Oklahoma on Saturday. They thoroughly outplayed a really good Cyclones team. Like I said, give Riley and Grinch a ton of credit. Moving on now to Northwestern OSU. I touched on this game during the Jets Instant recap yesterday. I'll put a finer point on it. I told you that Northwestern would cover the spread. I also told you that OSU would win. I was right on both counts. I also told you that there was an easy way for Northwestern to confuse Justin Fields. They did. Fields was dreadful. Completed just 12 of his 27 passes for 114 yards. He threw 2 interceptions. The only reason that the Buckeyes won that game is because Trey Sermon looked like the second coming of Archie Griffin. 29 carries for 331 yards and 2 touchdowns. I'd say that's a video game-like performance, but it's not, since we don't have NCAA football anymore. We should. I really like that game. I remember playing it on my PS Vita. Remember the PlayStation Vita? Man, I loved that game. I'll say it again, Justin Fields doesn't play well in big games. That scares the ever-loving mercy out of me. I will clear something up. A lot of my friends got on me for saying what I said yesterday about Darnold. I said if Darnold plays like he played yesterday in the next couple games, the Jets are going to have a tough decision on their hands. Do they roll with Darnold for one more year, or do they go with Justin Fields? It's not Zach Wilson. I've seen that mentioned. The second best quarterback in this draft class is Justin Fields. It's not Wilson. It's not Trey Lance. It's not Mac Jones. It's not Kyle Trask. It's Justin Fields. I said I don't know what I do. A lot of my friends got on me. Jacob, you've been killing Darnold for weeks now. Now you're saying there's a chance you may want him around. What's wrong with you? Look, recency bias is a thing. I mean, I saw this kid play the best game of the season against one of the best defenses, if not the best defense, in the NFL. Yeah, maybe I'm being blinded by the light. But it's just fact that it is a tough decision. Justin Fields isn't a sure thing. Trevor Lawrence is as close to a sure thing as we've had in the NFL draft since Andrew Luck. The gap between Lawrence and Fields is vast. If you try the offensive guru approach again, and that guy says to you, I can win with Sam Darnold. I don't want Justin Fields. Let me work with Sam Darnold. The Jets are probably going to stick with Darnold for one more year. I mean, I'll say this. If Fields balls out against Clemson, he doesn't necessarily need to outplay Trevor Lawrence. But if in the Sugar Bowl he has the game of his life, then yes, take Justin Fields. Lock, stock, and barrel, he's the guy. There is another thing, though. And I know I'm going on a tangent here, but indulge me for a moment, please. There are rumblings that the Texans could look to move on from Deshaun Watson. Nothing's concrete. It's mostly people in the Twitterverse just speculating. Dak Prescott is in that same vein, too. You could do a blockbuster trade. Is it a Madden trade? Yes. But it would make a little bit of sense. Sam Darnold and second overall for Deshaun Watson or Dak Prescott. I'd also need a high pick coming back. I'm not giving up all that just for one guy. You can't tell me that that's impossible. The Texans are going to hire a new GM. New regimes, 99% of the time, mean new quarterbacks. Maybe the new GM of the Texans decides, you know what? I don't want to pay Watson all this money. Let me have Darnold for the next couple years on a rookie contract, and he'll help me rebuild this team. The reality is the Texans are wasting Deshaun Watson. Would the Jets waste Deshaun Watson? They have a ton of cap space. if they bring in a big wide receiver and greatly improve the defense, that's not wasting Deshaun Watson. The Texans really don't have that flexibility. If Fields doesn't play well in the Sugar Bowl, or the Jets go with a defensive head coach, or a quote-unquote CEO type coach, whatever the hell that is, people are saying that's like Joe Judge. That's a bad CEO. If he was the CEO of my company, I'd fire him on the spot. The Giants are 5-9. They're in third place in the NFC East. I'm not saying fire Joe Judge if you're the Giants, or fire Dave Gettleman if you're the Giants, but I wouldn't point to Joe Judge as the model of a new NFL head coach. That's ridiculous. If the Jets don't go with an offensive guru, I'd have no problem trading that pick for Watson or Prescott. I understand the injury with Prescott. And yeah, he's going to need a ton of money soon. But Dak Prescott is a million times better than Sam Darnold. Would it be risky? Yes. But there was speculation when Jamal Adams was still a Jet that the Jets could do something crazy. Jamal Adams and Sam Darnold for Dak Prescott and blank. I think it would make sense to bring in Prescott. But again, that's only if Fields doesn't ball out in the Sugar Bowl, and or the Jets don't hire an offensive wunderkind to be their next head coach. Let the two of them grow together. A defensive guy, if you go that route, that's not going to end well. You're trusting the offensive coordinator a lot, and you're in danger of losing the offensive coordinator in the next head coaching cycle. That doesn't work for me. Okay, that was some rabbit hole. I'll go back to Northwestern OSU. Northwestern did have a bunch of opportunities to win this game, but Peyton Ramsey really isn't the guy who you want under center in that case. He doesn't have that killer instinct. He doesn't have the ability to put his foot on the throat of a team like the Buckeyes. He turned the ball over 3 times on Saturday. 2 interceptions and a lost fumble. The only guy who played well offensively for the Wildcats was Ramad Bowman. He had 8 catches for 103 yards. Northwestern played great defensively. Pat Fitzgerald is getting NFL head coaching buzz. And I think he'd do a solid job in the pros. This is a great Wildcats defense. They have nothing to be ashamed of here. They did everything they could to win. Their offense just couldn't help them. There is one other thing I want to say about this game. Darren Rovell of the Action Network did an interesting bit with this game. Before the season started, he put some money on his alma mater, Northwestern, to win the Big Ten. Obviously, Northwestern was in position to cash in on that bet. So what Rovell did was, he's affiliated with PointsBet. They had a deal or no deal setup where someone from PointsBet was offering him money to buy him out of the bet. as the game was going on. It was an incredible watch. It was a great idea. I don't know who came up with that. Ravel, PointsBet, the Action Network. But that was a fantastic idea. We could see more of that. I could see the Barstool guys doing that. Job well done by Darren Ravel and everyone affiliated with that project. That was a very enjoyable watch. I was watching that video. Moving on now to the game of the week in college football. Clemson, Notre Dame. Forgive me for going back to the Jets, but this game does pertain to them a lot. I told you on Friday that I was going to be pulling for Trevor Lawrence. I don't like Notre Dame, and I truly believe that if Trevor Lawrence goes to the Jets, or any team, the Jaguars too, he'll be great for him. And watching what he did on Saturday against a really good Notre Dame defense was incredible. The guy completed 25 of his 36 passes for over 300 yards. He was responsible for 3 touchdowns. He did throw an interception, but overall, he looked great. Yes, watching that game, I was salivating over the possibility of him coming to the Jets. I still think it's a possibility. Is it unlikely? Maybe, but again, I said this yesterday. Unbelievable things can sometimes be possible, in the immortal words of Tim Tebow. The thing that Lawrence did on Saturday, which was really impressive to me, was he got his third wide receiver involved. E.J. Williams did not have a good season up to this point. On Saturday, he was the Tigers' second best wide receiver. He had 4 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown. Notre Dame did a good job of taking Cornell Powell away. And when Amari Rogers was unavailable, Lawrence was able to pivot to Williams. That's a great job by him. Travis Etienne also had a great game. 10 carries for 124 yards and a touchdown. The Clemson offense was incredible on Saturday, but so was their defense. Guys like Nolan Turner, Malcolm Green, James Skalski, who had a great game, Darian Kendrick, KJ Henry, and Trenton Simpson were all really, really good on Saturday. Clemson destroyed Notre Dame. It was great to see. Ian Book wasn't bad, but he wasn't great. He completed 20 of his 28 passes for 219 yards. But he didn't throw a touchdown, didn't run for a touchdown. Kyron Williams was non-existent. Ben Skowronek, for the most part, was non-existent. He only had 4 catches. I understand for 54 yards, but still, only 4 catches. Like I said, the vaunted Notre Dame defense was destroyed. The only guys who played well for the Fighting Irish on defense were Kyle Hamilton and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Yes, watching the Jets yesterday, I was thinking of Trevor Lawrence and what he did on Saturday. You had to. Moving on now to Alabama, Florida. An absolutely epic game. Back and forth affair, no defense could make a stop. Mac Jones making his case to win the Heisman Trophy. Kyle Trask made his case to win the Heisman Trophy. It was an incredible game. Alabama was cooking on all cylinders. Jones completed 33 of his 43 passes for 418 yards and 5 touchdowns. It was the best game of Jones's career. Did he have some help? Absolutely. Najee Harris played the best game of his career. He was responsible for 5 touchdowns. Devontae Smith had 15 catches for 184 yards and 2 touchdowns. The one thing I didn't like from Alabama was that John Mechie no-showed. He only had 4 catches for 62 yards. But that's irrelevant. Alabama got the win. I'll say this. There are some people saying that Devontae Smith could win the Heisman Trophy. It's not going to happen. It's going to be either Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, or Kyle Trask. My vote would probably go to Trask. When you look at the year in totality, I think he's had the best season. Could it be Jones? Yes. Could it be Lawrence? Yes. I wouldn't have a problem with either of those guys. But my vote would go to Trask. I mean, he played great yesterday too. Completed 26 of his 40 passes for 408 yards. He was responsible for 4 touchdowns. He had to do it all himself on Saturday. The Gators had no running game whatsoever. That was the only thing that a defense did well in this game. The Alabama defense stopped the Gators' rushing attack. They only had 54 total rushing yards in that game. But Trask made him pay through the air. Kadarius Toney had 8 catches for 153 yards and a touchdown. Kyle Pitts had 7 catches for 129 yards and a touchdown. He's going to be a fantastic player in the NFL. He'll be what we all wanted Eric Ebron to be. I don't like that he declared for the draft and he's not going to play in the bowl game, but he has to look out for himself, I guess. Trayvon Grimes also played well, 4 catches for 78 yards and a touchdown. It's kind of interesting to think about. If Florida had won this game, could they have snuck into the CFP? If you're the committee, you'd be hard-pressed to leave the SEC champs out of the playoff. Fortunately for them, they didn't have to make that decision. And while I'm on the topic, I don't have much of a problem with the final ranking. Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, and OSU are probably the 4 most talented teams in the nation. I understand the argument of a team like Texas A&M. They went 8-1. OSU only went 6-0. And if it wasn't for the Big Ten moving back the goalposts, a team like A&M probably gets in. Jimbo Fisher has every right to be upset. Kellen Mond has every right to be upset. Aggies fans, great fans, have every right to be upset. Cincinnati fans have every right to be upset. A team like Coastal Carolina, with their COVID outbreak and being co-Sunbelt champions, I don't mind them not getting in. A 2-loss team like ISU or Georgia or a team like Florida, no, they don't get in. A&M and Cincy do have legitimate beefs, though. Ultimately, though, the committee was in a can't-win situation. There was no one right answer. These are the 4 most talented teams in the nation. Is it a bad look to have a 6-0 team and 2 one-loss teams in there? I guess, but who are you leaving out? If Clemson had lost on Saturday, yes, kick Clemson out. But you can't leave Notre Dame out. They beat Clemson. You can't leave Clemson out. They beat Notre Dame. The Big Ten muddied the waters by doing what they did with OSU. If they had said, we're going to stick with Indiana Northwestern, there's no issue. I'd say that Cincinnati deserves to get in. I wouldn't have been too upset with A&M getting in, but I do think Cincinnati has a better argument. Undefeated team. Do you have a right to be upset if you're Texas A&M or Cincinnati? Yes. But don't be upset at the committee. Be upset at the playoff for only having 4 teams. We need 8. It's just that simple. I understand you don't want to go up against the NFL playoffs, but every year there are qualified teams, plural, that get left out. We need 8 teams in the playoff. What's a better representation of college football this year? Alabama, Clemson, OSU, Notre Dame? Or all those teams and Texas A&M, Cincinnati, Georgia, and Oklahoma? The answer is the latter. That's just fact. Speaking of Cincinnati, I do want to talk about their game on Saturday. They beat Tulsa 27-24 to win the AAC. I told you that Tulsa doesn't have a great offense. And Zach Smith did not play well. He completed just 13 of his 30 passes. He did throw a touchdown to Juan Carlos Santana. But other than that, he did nothing. The reason this game was so close was because Corey Taylor and Deneric Prince had great games. Taylor had 22 carries for 130 yards and a touchdown. Prince had 9 carries for 78 yards and a touchdown. Give the Golden Hurricane credit. They had every opportunity to win this game. They gave the Bearcats all they could handle. But Desmond Ridder is a really good college quarterback. He contributed with his arm, completed 19 of his 29 passes for 269 yards and a touchdown, and he contributed with his legs. He had 16 carries for 83 yards and a touchdown. I also love what he did with Alec Pierce. Pierce had the game of his life, had 5 catches for 146 yards and a touchdown. Cincinnati, for my money, is the 5th best team in the nation. The reason that I put A&M over Cincy is because that's what the committee would do, unfortunately. I do think they put Cincinnati 6th over a 3-loss ISU and Florida team. And I definitely think they leapfrog Georgia. But it is time to do something that I started this show off by doing. Breaking down a college football bowl game. We are in bowl season. I love it. Not as many bowl games this year as there were last year. games were canceled because of the pandemic. But I'm going to spend a lot of time in the coming episodes talking about these bowl games. The first bowl game on the docket is the Myrtle Beach Bowl, a new bowl game. Uncharted waters, I like it. That features Appalachian State taking on North Texas. Once upon a time this year, Appalachian State was ranked. They had a really good season. They went 8-3. Give Sean Clark a ton of credit. It wouldn't surprise me if he got an offer from a bigger school. Zach Thomas didn't have a bad season. Completed just under 65% of his passes for 2,000 yards, 19 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. Not great, but also not terrible. The thing that Appalachian State is great at is just pounding the ball down your throat. Cameron Peoples is a really underrated running back. He had 807 rushing yards this year and 7 touchdowns. Nate Noel is also going to get involved. He had a good season. He averaged over 6 yards a run. Same thing with Marcus Williams Jr. Daytrick Harrington is out for this game. That's going to hurt the Mountaineers, but I think they can withstand it. They also have a couple good wide receivers in Thomas Hennigan and Malik Williams. Defensively, they have a couple guys who you should key in on. Demetrius Taylor and Trey Cobb are really good pass rushers. Taylor is super athletic. He has 4 pass deflections this year. He's a defensive lineman. Their secondary is really good. Brennan Harrington, Ryan Huff, and DeMarco Jackson. This is a really good Mountaineers team. When you look at North Texas, they remind me of a little kid playing a football video game. The guy doesn't know anything other than trying to win 48-45 games. North Texas has no defense. They have given up over 500 yards per game this season. They've also gotten over 500 yards per game this season. Unfortunately for them, they don't have much of a chance in this bowl game. Austin Orn, their normal quarterback, is out. Their best player, Jalen Darden, opted out of the bowl game to prepare for the draft. Shame on him. I don't mind a guy like Pitts doing it, but a guy like Darden? Come on, play for your brothers. How many times is North Texas going to be in a bowl game? Florida, they get in every year. North Texas? Come on. That's ridiculous. Realistically, the Mean Green don't have much of a chance in this game. They don't match up well with Appalachian State in terms of talent. Appalachian State is at almost full strength. North Texas isn't, and it's not even close. Give me the Mountaineers. Alright, now I'll give you some NHL Valk talk. It is official. The 2021 NHL season is a go. There are a bunch of things to break down here. For the 7 teams that didn't make it to Toronto or Edmonton last year, their training camp will start on New Year's Eve. Those players are going to love that. Everyone else, it starts January 3rd. The season will start on January 13th and go all the way to May 8th. Playoffs will start on May 11th. Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals will be on July 15th. There will be no preseason games, and each team will play 56 games, all against their own division. There are new divisions this year. Just for this year, we have 4 divisions: East, Central, West, and North. I'm not going to go through every team in each division, but what you need to know is the teams in the East, Central, and West are all in the U.S. They're going to face each other 8 times over the course of the season. And a big thanks to the Sporting News for putting this article together. Very well done. The North Division is all the Canadian teams. They're going to face each other 9 or 10 times throughout the season. Every game is going to be played in each team's home arena. We're not doing any bubbles. The only team that doesn't apply to is the San Jose Sharks. They will play in Arizona because of the Santa Clara County restrictions. The way the playoffs are going to work this year is interesting. No more 24 teams. We're going back to 16. The top 4 teams in each division will go to the Stanley Cup playoffs. The top seed will take on the 4 seed, and the second seed will take on the 3rd seed. The winners of those series will meet in the semifinals. The conference finals will feature the 4 teams that get out of their division. By the way, I don't have a problem with any of this. The only problem that I have is that it took so long, and I'll get into that in a minute. There aren't expanded rosters. There is a taxi squad, though. Think of the taxi squad as a practice squad. Cap Friendly on Twitter put out a great bullet point list of what you need to know about the taxi squad. Not going to go into everything there. Players can opt out. If you played on a team that wasn't in the bubble, you have until Christmas Eve to decide. If you're on a team that did play in the bubble, you have until December 27th to decide. We shouldn't begrudge any player who wants to opt out. The trade deadline this year will be April 12th. Free agency will begin July 28th. The NHL draft will be July 23rd and July 24th. Also, one thing that's important to note, no prorated salaries. Donald Fehr sacrificed some games. If we had started on New Year's, we could have gotten more games. That's what Gary Bettman initially wanted, to start on New Year's. We could have gotten more games. But Donald Fehr held firm. No proration, no increase in escrow, no deferred payments. You gotta give Fehr credit. I don't like that he cost us more hockey, but at the end of the day, he did what he had to do as the leader of the NHLPA. I can't begrudge him too much. The guy did his job. The bottom line is, we're going to get hockey this year. You can't tell me that you didn't think that there could be another canceled season. Donald Fear once canceled the World Series. He could cancel an NHL season. But give him credit, give Gary Bettman credit. They got this done. I will say one thing, though. I'm not going to do an NHL season preview like I'm going to do for the NBA. With the new playoff format, I just don't think it's conducive to a preview. I don't think it works. Sorry. Speaking of the NBA, there are a couple stories there that I want to talk about. The first one is the massive extension that Rudy Gobert got. 5 years at $205 million. That's $41 million a year. To the guy who brought the coronavirus into the NBA. There were rumors that him and Donovan Mitchell were ticked off at each other. Evidently that's not true, because they're both signed long-term to the Jazz. Look, Gobert is one of the best centers in the NBA. The guy's averaged a double-double for the past 4 seasons. He's the Stifle Tower. He's the best defensive center in the NBA. But the reality is, he's an old-school center. There's a reason you don't see too many of those guys anymore. The game has moved away from them. Is there still a place for him? Yes. I like Gobert. I like him a lot. But you can't give a guy like that the third biggest deal in NBA history. He is not worth that. You've now shattered the mark for contracts for a center. The record for biggest contract for a center in the NBA belonged to Karl Anthony Towns before this. It was a 5-year deal worth $158,253,000. Gobert shattered that. And you know what? Gobert's not better than Towns. Gobert deserved a 5-year deal realistically worth $29 million a year. That's $145 million over 5 years. That's fair for Gobert. The reality is you can't commit over $40 million a year to an old school center. That doesn't work. This is a bad deal for the Jazz. I know how important he is to them, but you've got to convince him to take less. This will come back to bite the Jazz in the butt. Moving on now to the Lakers, signing my boy Kyle Kuzma to a 3-year extension worth $40 million. And this is fair for Kuzma. I like Kuzma. I don't like that he was picked with a Brooklyn Nets pick, but I really like Kyle Kuzma. I thought it was a reach at the time, but he's proven me wrong. I like watching him play. I think he has a really good game. I think he's been asked to do too much by the Lakers at times. The reality is, in a perfect world, he's a sixth man. You want him being the leader of your bench unit. Could he start? If he had to, yes, but that's not how he's best used. He's best used as a sixth man. Have him lead your bench unit. Have him in that Lou Williams, Dennis Schroeder, Karis LeVert role. A little over $13 million a year is more than fair for a guy like that. Like I said, I really like Kuzma. I think he's gotten a bad rap. He played a big role for the Lakers in the bubble. This is a really good move for the Lakers. I like it a lot. Brooklyn Nets season preview comes your way tonight. NBA preview comes your way tomorrow morning. Regular episodes of the Jacob Valk Show tomorrow. and Wednesday afternoon. Until then, I am Jacob Valk saying that waking up in the Ritz-Carlton is pretty good since it's not the Holiday Inn.